Well, good afternoon, everyone. This is Tony Whitbeck. I'm the CEO of Key Management Group, and with me today is Todd Doherty, who's our Director of Acquisition and Legacy Planning and our M&A expert. Todd's going to take us through the majority of today's content. As you can see, the title is Continuity Planning. But before I turn it over to him, I'd like to spend a few minutes talking about Key Management Group and what we do, and then set the stage for his presentation. So to begin, Key Management Group is a full-service practice management firm for the financial services industry. We offer a whole host of services. We break them down into four major categories. The first is our practice management, where we offer executive coaching, an operational performance package, where we work on the operations of the business, and then our complete practice management, which really deals with managing, organizing, and leading staff. We have two outsourcing services that we offer to one of our partner firms, which is Ameriprise, and that's client meeting preparation and financial plan production. We have a whole host of human resources and risk mitigation services that includes recruiting, onboarding and offboarding, HR file reviews, compliance, employee handbook policies, AFA compensation and incentive structures, an HR assessment, and a practice protection assessment. These last two assessments here, the HR assessment and the practice protection assessment, allows you to have us go through a full assessment of your practice and to identify where there might be some risks regarding either HR or from a risk mitigation or regulatory perspective. Our fourth area is around acquisition and legacy planning. We do business valuations. We do probably 300 to 400 a year. We have a turnkey continuity plan, and we're going to learn more about that today from Todd. We have a deal-making service, and this is when a buyer and seller has found each other, but they need some help in consummating the deal. We have an escrow service, which is often used when buying practices. We have our advisor legacy platform, which is where we help people buy and sell practices. And then we have our elite buyer program on that platform as well. So let me set the stage, and I'm going to do so by telling a story. And then eventually I'm going to turn it over to Todd to go through today's content. So this is a story of Patrick. And Patrick's a successful advisor in the prime of his career. He's been an advisor for 24 years. He's built a practice that has $92 million in assets under management and $750,000 in gross revenue. 3 weeks after celebrating his 56th birthday, he unexpectedly died. Now, his wife, Linda, doesn't know much about the practice. She doesn't work in the practice, and she really isn't sure what she should do. Well, fortunately, or maybe unfortunately, one of Patrick's colleagues, Phil, contacted Linda, and she offered to buy Patrick's practice for $1 million. He says that he can work out all the details with the corporate office and that he'll ensure that Patrick's clients are taken care of so that she doesn't have to worry. Now, it's always dangerous to use rules of thumb, but when valuing a practice, if you look at a $750,000 in gross revenue, $1 million that's being offered this practice is well below market value. Unfortunately, there are also some competing forces involved here. Their oldest daughter, Melanie, she wants her mom to sell the practice so that her mom can live off of the money. Their youngest son, Nathan, he was planning on working with his father, and he wanted his mom to keep the practice until he finishes college and can take over. But since Linda is not involved in the practice and she's not licensed, she's not able to keep the practice until her son finishes college. And then Linda's parents, who are also Patrick's clients, they're concerned about their investments that both they and other family members have made. So you have these competing forces, or at least opinions, on what's going to happen. Their daughter wants her to sell the practice, the son wants her to keep it, and the parents are concerned about their money. All of this could have been prevented had a good continuity plan been put into place. For most financial firms with the entrepreneurial model, so those that are with independent contractors, most of these firms require the advisor to manage their own client relationships and to have a succession plan put in place. And so it's the advisor's responsibility to make their plans to handle the client transition. Now, oftentimes firms will provide templates that you can use, but what we have found is that those templates really don't cover everything and can really be dangerous when you start using rules of thumb. Having a solid continuity plan can actually lead to growth in a practice, which may sound kind of strange. Here's a quote from Tom Clark in Investment News. Most clients won't ask, but they all wonder what happens to their money when their planner retires or dies. Communication of a succession plan can actually fuel growth into an advisor's practice because it gives the clients confidence that the firm will be around for their lifetime. Clients will be more apt to share other assets and their children's assets with a firm that is going to be around for a long period of time than a 65-year-old planner with a 65-year-old planner that they really like, but who has not clearly outlined or communicated a succession plan. In other words, if you can tell the story about who's going to take over your practice, those clients, especially older clients, are likely to stay and continue to refer perhaps their younger family members. Let's take a look at some pretty scary statistics. The overwhelming majority of advisors, and even those that are less than 5 years from retirement, do not have a succession plan. What's really scary is that 59% of these individuals said it's an unknown outside buyer that would likely purchase their practice. So they don't know who it is. They're less than 5 years away, but they know it's not someone in their practice. And 30% say they would go to a designated non-partner successor. So they know who it is, but it's not someone in their practice. So 89% would be selling outside or transferring outside, and almost 60% don't know who that person is, and they don't have an agreement. Oftentimes, advisors suffer from the Cobbler's children syndrome, which is also known as vocational irony. And this happens when skilled professionals are unable to apply their own expertise to their own personal situation for the benefit of themselves or their families. So financial advisors provide guidance to hundreds of clients and help them prepare for all kinds of unplanned events, unemployment, death, disability, yet many have not taken the steps to protect their own practice, which is often the most valuable asset that they have. So I want to do a quick poll of those who are on today's call. And so this is the audience participation part of today's presentation. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask a question, and then I'd like you to please answer that question, and then I will read the responses. So the first question we have is, do you know who your successor will be in the event of a death or disability? So if you could please select the best answer. And this is where you participate. For those of you who are not looking at your screen, you have to look at your screen and select the answer that makes sense. All right, I'm going to close out the poll. And the answer is 100% of you said that you do not know who your successor would be. Okay, so I guess we're talking to the right crowd. The next question. Do you have a written continuity plan? Yes or no? A written and enforceable continuity plan. Again, please select yes or no. Okay. Oh, again, 100% of you do not have a written continuity plan. And then the last one, when is the last time you had a professional business valuation done? Never, last 12 months, or the last 5 years? Well, Todd, looks like we got the perfect crowd for today. 100% have never had a business valuation done. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Todd, and he's going to take you through the rest of today's content. So Todd?
Thank you, Tony, and thanks to all of you for joining us today. A study was done for attorneys who specialize in estate planning to find out what keeps business owners from planning around continuity of their business. The first item, if you could advance that slide, Tony. We're still on the poll there, so to speak.
Well, we shouldn't be.
Yeah, I'll keep going. The first item that they noted was procrastination or finding the time to complete a plan. Probably the reason why most things are not completed, and it's fairly easy to put it off. Many advisors have told us over the years that it's been on their to-do list in some cases for as many as 10 years, but they just don't find the time to make it happen. The second reason is the failure to obtain a proper valuation of the business. Again, we've seen many circumstances where people have used rules of thumb or averages when they do value a practice, but that's certainly not sufficient to enter into a continuity or succession plan. Number three was the failure to identify a succession team, an extremely important consideration in our own industry because the continuity of the client service is generally the primary concern of the selling advisor. Number four was the failure to integrate the business succession with the estate plan or to hire a qualified estate planning attorney. And I would add to that, and this is an interesting thing in our own industry, that many advisors don't even enter the value of their practice in their financial plan, let alone their estate plan. So obviously there's a big gap in execution there. And then lastly, it's the failure to plan for the 4 Ds, which are death, disability, divorce, and departure. We're still seeing the poll up on the screen, Tony.
Okay, let me see what I can do because I do not show that on my end here.
So the takeaway there is, as we try to correct the technical issue here, the more you plan, the better the outcome will be. Certainly those steps should include, there we go, completing a formal continuity agreement. Second is managing the equity in your practice. And number three, it's also going to be helpful to understand what your succession options are, how you would like to sell, the timing of the sale, what you plan to do after you retire and so forth. And really having a better understanding of those items is going to make you more planful and more likely to have a successful outcome. What another study noted, and this was completed by Cirilli and Associates, is that for those advisors who have done meaningful continuity planning, they tend to improve other areas of their practice at the same time. So you can see here on this slide that 52% have streamlined their workflows, 45% have updated technology in their practice, and 43% are working with a consultant. I imagine the last of those 3 points is the primary driver behind a lot of those improvements as well, because many advisors who do formally plan around the continuity of their practice and the succession do tend to hire outside consultants who are very helpful in making other types of improvements in the practice. So let's look at the primary reasons why continuity planning is so important, both for yourself, your family, and for the clients. Our years of experience have shown us that there's really 3 key areas why continuity planning is really essential for your practice. The first, and this is not necessarily in order of importance, but the first is to protect the equity in your practice. One of the things that we've noted over the years is that for the average advisor, the value of their practice or the equity in it is their largest personal asset, or at least one of their larger personal assets. Our current average valuation is in excess of $1,600,000. So certainly it is a substantial asset and one that needs to be protected. Number 2 is that you certainly don't want your heirs to have to navigate the sale of your practice while they're going through a challenging personal tragedy, that being either death or disability of the advisor. They have no experience in doing so, don't know what the practice is worth. As Tony pointed out in the example, there's a lot of competing pressures on them, and it's just not a good time to be trying to make important business decisions when you're really going through a personal tragedy. And then lastly, having a plan in place ensures that clients have a smooth transition to a new advisor and no time frame in between there where the clients are in a bit of a limbo situation. So those are the three primary drivers behind the importance of continuity planning. But let's take a look at what would happen if you don't have a plan in place relative to those three items. So the first is regarding the equity in the practice is that if there is no continuity plan in place, it tends to lead to what you might refer to as a bit of a fire sale. And if there's a delay in the sale that goes along with that, then you're likely to lose a significant amount of equity. It isn't uncommon, and we've seen this, certainly in real situations in the past, where a practice can lose as much as 25% of its value due to not having a plan in place and having the heirs try to navigate the sale. The second item is, certainly leaving it up to your heirs to sell the practice can be extremely stressful and emotional. And even under a normal circumstance, the sale of a practice is complicated, if nothing else. And you certainly don't want to leave that in their hands when they have no experience in that area. The last of the three is that period of uncertainty, if there is no plan that directs the clients immediately to their permanent home with a new advisor, then generally what happens in those circumstances are the clients are temporarily assigned either to a registered principal, or in some cases, depending on the broker dealer, they're distributed out to other advisors in the area until the heirs or estate have the opportunity to sell the practice, and then the clients are reassigned. That is definitely not an ideal situation for the clients, and also tends to diminish the value of the practice because you'll lose more clients in attrition due to that time of uncertainty. Having done a considerable amount of continuity consulting over the years, we've also recognized that there are three additional hurdles that most advisors experience that, again, has prevented them from planning. That being the time consideration, and I would say it has to do a lot with the fact that the advisors don't know how much time it will take. The second is the consideration of cost.